The first sound Noah heard that morning was not his mother's voice. It was the scrape of a chair as a stranger reached for his small hand across a courtroom bench. Maya watched, unable to move, as the bailiff gently pried her son's fingers from her dress. He did not cry. He simply stared at her with the quiet confusion children reserve for betrayal. The kind adults explain using words like law, stability, and best interest. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button now. You don't want to miss how this story ends. Now let's dive in. The courthouse in Lagos Island smelled of paper, heat, and authority. Ceiling fans rotated lazily above the packed courtroom, pushing warm air from one bench to another. Lawyers whispered over files. Family members sat stiffly, pretending not to stare at the woman in a simple navy dress seated alone at the defense table. Maya Brooks had no lawyer. She folded her hands tightly in her lap, not out of calmness, but to stop the trembling. Her sandals were worn but clean. Her hair was tied back in a careful bun she had redone 4 times before entering the building. Across the aisle sat Victor Hale, tailored charcoal suit, gold wristwatch, polished shoes that reflected the courtroom lights. Beside him was Lena Okafor, elegant in cream silk, her manicured nails resting lightly on Victor's arm in a display subtle enough for civility, yet obvious enough for ownership. Behind them sat Victor's parents, Chief and Mrs. Hale, pillars of wealth and reputation in the city. Their expressions held the composure of people accustomed to being believed. Noah sat between a court welfare officer and a clerk, swinging his legs, not understanding why his parents sat apart. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Custody petition 1142B, the clerk read. Victor Hale versus Maya Brooks. They sat. Victor's lawyer, Barrister Kola Adebayo, rose smoothly. His voice carried the easy authority of a man who never doubted outcomes. My lord, my client seeks full custody of the minor child Noah Hale. We will demonstrate the respondent is presently incapable of providing a stable emotional or financial environment. He paused just long enough for the words to settle. Furthermore, we will establish that Mr. Hale has consistently supported the child materially and psychologically despite the respondent's instability. The word lingered in the air. The judge nodded slightly. Mrs. Brooks, do you have representation? Maya stood slowly. No, my lord. A murmur passed through the room. The judge studied her briefly, not unkind, but already resigned to the structure of the morning. You may speak for yourself. She swallowed. Yes, my lord. Barrister Adebayo began. Mr. Hale, please tell the court why you filed for custody. Victor stood. His voice was steady, measured, the voice he used in business negotiations. I love my son, but Maya has not been herself for months. After her grandfather passed away, she became withdrawn. She often isolates herself. Sometimes she forgets to eat, to sleep properly. Noah needs consistency. He glanced briefly toward Maya, not angry, not cruel. Worse, concerned. I can provide him stability, education, health care, and a structured home. The judge nodded. Barrister Adebayo continued. And currently, where does the respondent reside? Victor hesitated just enough. A rented apartment in Yaba. 1 bedroom. The word struck harder than an insult. The lawyer paced slowly. Meanwhile, you maintain the family home in Ikoyi. Yes. And the child has his own room, caregiver, and school arrangement there. Yes. Adebayo turned slightly toward the judge. No further questions. Maya's turn. She stood, unsure where to look. Her voice emerged softer than intended. Noah is happy with me. The courtroom waited. She tried again. I take him to school. I cook for him. We read every night. He sleeps beside me when there is thunder. Silence. Barrister Adebayo did not object. He didn't need to. The judge wrote something down. The first witness was Lena. She walked confidently to the stand, heels clicking with precision. Miss Okafor, the lawyer began. How often do you interact with the respondent? Frequently, she replied gently. I try to help her. Help her? Yes. After the funeral, she became distant. Sometimes she stared for long periods. Once she forgot Noah at school for nearly an hour. Gasps traveled across the benches. Maya's head snapped up. That is not true. Mrs. Brooks, the judge warned. Lena continued softly, almost sympathetically. I don't blame her. Grief affects people differently, but a child requires reliability. She stepped down. Her expression toward Maya was not hatred. It was pity. That hurt more. Next came Mrs. Hale. She adjusted her galley before speaking. We welcome Maya as a daughter, but she never adjusted to responsibility. She lived simply, yes, but not wisely. She refused help, refused guidance. A mother must be strong. Her voice tightened. Noah deserves a proper upbringing. Structure. Legacy. Legacy. The word carried weight heavier than wealth. The final witness was the family doctor. He spoke carefully. Following the death of her grandfather, Mrs. Brooks showed symptoms consistent with acute depressive withdrawal. I advised rest and supervision. Would such a state affect childcare? The lawyer asked. In some cases, yes. By the time the witnesses ended, the courtroom had formed its opinion. Maya was not dangerous. She was worse. She was inadequate. She stood alone against wealth, order, and social proof. Every testimony painted her grief as weakness, her modest living as neglect, her silence as incapability. Barrister Adebayo summarized calmly. My lord, this is not punishment. It is protection. Mr. Hale offers certainty. The respondent offers affection, but affection without stability risks the child's development. He sat. The judge leaned back. All signs pointed to one conclusion. Maya looked toward Noah. He waved slightly, trusting her to fix something she did not know how to fight. And for the first time since entering the courtroom, fear finally reached her eyes. The judge called for a 20-minute recess. Chairs scraped the floor as people rose, stretching, whispering predictions that no longer required discretion. The verdict, in their minds, was already decided, paperwork waiting for signature. Victor stood among associates who shook his hand with restrained congratulations. Hard situation, one murmured, but best for the boy, another added. Lena dabbed invisible moisture from the corner of her eye, performing relief before the outcome existed. Across the hall, Maya did not join anyone. She sat alone on a wooden bench beneath a flickering corridor light. The courthouse hallway carried echoes, footsteps, distant arguments, ringing phones. Yet around her there was an odd stillness, as if sound avoided her. Noah had been taken to the children's waiting room. Her hands suddenly felt empty. For months, she had lived inside a fog that began the day her grandfather died. Not dramatic grief, not loud, but a slow disappearance of direction. She woke, cooked, washed clothes, held Noah, and endured days that seemed to move without purpose. She had ignored the letter. It rested in her handbag since the funeral, thick ivory paper sealed with dark wax. She knew the handwriting immediately the day it was given to her. She simply wasn't ready to read words that confirmed finality. But now she had nothing left to postpone. Her fingers trembled as she opened the clasp. The envelope slid out, heavy, deliberate, addressed. To my granddaughter, Maya Brooks, only when you truly stand alone. Her throat tightened. She broke the seal. The letter unfolded in several pages written in firm ink strokes she remembered from childhood homework corrections and birthday cards. My dear Maya, if you're reading this, it means I am gone and the world has finally mistaken your quietness for weakness. Good. She blinked. You were never meant to fight loudly. Power that announces itself is temporary. Real power waits. She inhaled shakily. I built my life ensuring you would never have to beg anyone for dignity. However, I also ensured you would never inherit it until the moment you needed to stand on your own feet, without me, without comfort, without protection. Her grip tightened on the paper. Today, by the authority of my final will and trust, you inherit Cole and Dominion Legal Consortium in its entirety. Its global holdings, its litigation rights, its assets, and its controlling interests. She stopped breathing. Current valuation, $92 billion. Her eyes moved over the number again and again, unable to interpret it as reality. You're not receiving money. You're receiving influence. The firm you now own has represented governments, corporations, and courts themselves. It has not merely practiced law, it shapes it. Her heartbeat became audible in her ears. Including the court you may be standing in now. A sound escaped her lips, not a cry, not a laugh. Recognition. Arthur Bennett will confirm this immediately upon your instruction. He has been waiting outside the courtroom since proceedings began. He worked for you now. Her head lifted slowly. Through the corridor glass, she noticed a man seated quietly near the staircase, gray-haired, patient, carrying a black briefcase on his lap. He had been there all morning. She never questioned it. The final line was short. "Stand up, Maya. Not as my granddaughter, as my successor. Justice Adrian Cole." Her breathing steadied. For the first time in months, the fog receded. Not dramatically. Simply gone. She folded the letter carefully, placed it back into the envelope, and rose. Her posture changed before she realized it. Shoulders straight, steps measured, eyes focused not downward but forward. She walked toward the man. He stood immediately. "Mrs. Brooks," he said calmly. "I was wondering when you would read it." She studied him. "You're Arthur Bennett." "Yes." She held his gaze, no hesitation now. Then we returned to court. The courtroom reconvened. Everyone resumed their positions, expecting conclusion, not interruption. Victor adjusted his cufflinks. Lena whispered something reassuring. His parents sat upright, victory already arranged in their expressions. The judge entered. "Court resumes. I will now deliver. Apologies, my lord." The voice came from the rear. Heads turned. Arthur Bennett walked down the aisle with composed precision. Not hurried, not dramatic, inevitable. He placed his briefcase on the counsel table beside Maya. Barrister Adebayo frowned. "And you are?" Arthur opened the case, removing documents embossed with seals. "My name is Arthur Bennett. I represent Mrs. Maya Brooks." A ripple of confusion moved through the courtroom. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Proceed." Arthur's voice remained even. "Before judgment is delivered, the court must recognize a material change in legal standing affecting both representation and conflict of interest." Victor leaned forward slightly. Arthur continued. "As of 11:42 this morning, Mrs. Maya Brooks became the sole owner and chief executive officer of Cole and Dominion Legal Consortium." Silence. Absolute silence. The judge blinked. "That firm?" "Yes, my lord. The same firm retained by Mr. Victor Hale for this case." The air in the room shifted. Not emotionally, but structurally, like a building realizing its foundation moved. Barrister Adebayo stood abruptly. "That is impossible." Arthur slid a document forward. "Certified probate confirmation, board transfer authorization, and international asset registration. Effective immediately." The judge read. His expression changed from neutrality to careful restraint. Victor stared at Maya. She did not look back immediately. She adjusted her sleeve calmly. A small movement that somehow carried more authority than any speech she had given all day. Lena's hand slowly dropped from Victor's arm. Arthur spoke again. "Therefore, the legal team currently arguing against Mrs. Brooks now falls under her executive authority. Continuing representation presents direct ethical conflict." Adebayo said nothing. He knew. The judge closed the folder. "Court will take judicial notice of this development." He looked at Maya, not as a struggling parent anymore, but as a figure whose influence extended beyond the room. For the first time that day, people were not observing her circumstances. They were recalculating their own. Victor's confidence faltered almost invisibly, and Maya finally met his eyes, calm, steady, unfamiliar. The power in the room had moved, and everyone felt it. No one spoke for nearly 10 seconds after the judge placed the document down. It was not confusion. It was recalculation. Barrister Adebayo remained standing, but no longer argued. His earlier confidence depended on a predictable structure. Petitioner responded, evidence, ruling. That structure had collapsed. He now represented a client whose opponent technically owned the institution employing him. The judge cleared his throat. "Counselor, do you intend to continue?" Adebayo hesitated, then slowly sat. "My lord, under these circumstances, My firm must withdraw representation pending ethical review. The words landed harder than any accusation Maya had heard that morning. Victor turned sharply. You're abandoning the case? It is not abandonment, Adebayo replied carefully. It is legal impossibility. Arthur Bennett remained still, hands folded behind his back. The judge leaned forward. Given the direct conflict of interest and the respondent's newly established financial and institutional capacity, the court must reassess the original premise of incapability. He looked toward the clerk. Bring the welfare officer. The woman who had been sitting beside Noah stepped forward, surprised to be summoned again. My lord, you interviewed both parents? Yes. You found the child emotionally bonded to the mother? Yes. And the primary argument against her was financial stability and psychological concern? Yes, my lord. The judge nodded slowly. That argument is now invalid. He paused, not theatrically, but to ensure precision. The court is not concerned with social status, but welfare. There is no evidence of abuse, neglect, or harm. The mother's circumstances have demonstrably changed, and the father's petition appears based primarily on comparative advantage. Victor stood abruptly. My lord, this is absurd. The judge raised a hand. Mr. Hale, sit down. He did. The room held its breath. The judge delivered the ruling without flourish. Petition for full custody is dismissed. Primary custody is awarded to Maya Brooks. The father retains visitation rights under standard conditions. The gavel struck, a small sound, yet heavier than the entire hearing. Noah looked around, confused by the sudden movement as court staff relaxed. The welfare officer gently guided him toward Maya. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she knelt and opened her arms. He ran to her. The embrace was tight, silent, and unshaken by victory or defeat, only relief. She pressed her cheek to his hair and closed her eyes, grounding herself in the single truth that mattered. Across the aisle, Victor remained seated. Not angry, not shouting, simply hollow, as if an outcome he never considered possible had removed his sense of orientation. Behind him, his parents whispered urgently. Lena stared forward, face pale, already understanding what influence meant in a city governed by relationships. Arthur leaned slightly toward Maya. Madam CEO, there are board calls waiting. She gave a faint nod, but said nothing. As she stood, the people who had spoken against her that morning subtly moved aside to let her pass. No one instructed them to. They just did. The city adjusted faster than Victor expected. By evening, the story had spread, not publicly yet, but privately, where real consequences lived. Law partners, investors, and longtime associates made careful phone calls framed as casual inquiries. Is it true? She controls the firm now? Fully, within 48 hours. Meetings he once led became meetings he was not invited to. His construction company's pending permits slowed. A banking negotiation postponed indefinitely. A partnership dinner quietly canceled due to schedule conflicts. No accusation ever named Maya. Nothing needed to. Influence rarely announced itself. It simply rearranged doors. Victor sat in his office overlooking the lagoon, phone on the table, waiting for calls that did not come. Lena tried reassurance at first. Things will stabilize. But she began spending less time there. Her presence depended on certainty, and certainty had moved elsewhere. At the Hale residence, even his father spoke cautiously. You should resolve this peacefully. Victor looked up sharply. She humiliated me. His father's reply was measured. No, the court ruled. The rest is consequence. Meanwhile, Maya did not celebrate. Her first day at Cole and Dominion's headquarters began at sunrise. The building stood quiet and imposing, glass reflecting morning light across the marina. Employees had prepared for weeks after Justice Cole's passing, expecting a distant executive committee, not a successor who arrived personally. She walked through the lobby without entourage. People recognized her slowly, not from society pages, but from the hearing whispered about across firms. Conversations paused, then resumed with careful politeness. Arthur guided her to the executive office. Inside, Everything remained preserved. Darkwood desk, shelves of legal volumes, the faint scent of old paper and cedar, her grandfather's space untouched. She did not sit immediately. Instead, she walked to the window where he used to stand while explaining cases to her when she was younger, translating law into simple human stories. "You never fight loudly," he once told her. "You position yourself so the fight ends before it begins." She understood now. Her first directive was brief. "No retaliation," she told the senior partners assembled. They exchanged glances. "Madam, some of Mr. Hale's holdings." "Continue normal operations," she said calmly. "We do not pursue him. We do not protect him either." Strategic neutrality. It was more powerful than attack. Within weeks, she learned the network, contracts, courts, regulators, silent alliances her grandfather had built over decades. She spoke rarely, but listened constantly. Decisions were precise, minimal, irreversible. Her authority did not come from raising her voice. It came from never needing to. In her apartment that night, Noah slept peacefully while she reviewed documents at the dining table. A modest home still, she had not moved. Stability for him mattered more than display. She paused only once, looking at him curled beneath his blanket. Everything she now controlled, wealth, institutions, influence, existed for one purpose, ensuring no one could ever try to take him again. Across the city, Victor stared at his phone as another meeting cancellation arrived. For the first time, he began to understand. He had not lost custody because Maya became powerful. He lost because she always had the capacity, and he mistook silence for absence. And the consequences of that mistake were only beginning to unfold. Victor refused to disappear quietly. For weeks he endured shrinking business deals and cautious conversations until humiliation transformed into determination. If influence was closing doors privately, he would open them publicly. 3 weeks after the custody ruling, his interview aired. The television studio lights were bright and forgiving, designed to soften expressions and sharpen narratives. Victor sat upright across from the host, dressed carefully but without his usual ease. The question came gently. "Mr. Hale, are you saying the custody decision was influenced by power?" He inhaled slowly. "I am saying," he replied, voice steady, "that wealth should not determine parenting rights. My former wife inherited a legal empire overnight. Before that, the court saw her reality clearly." The host leaned forward. "You believe she is unfit?" "I believe grief, instability, and sudden power are dangerous combinations around a child." The statement spread before the program even ended. By morning, online articles appeared. Wealthy heiress manipulates court. Business tycoon claims son taken by influence from unknown widow to billionaire CEO. Too fast? Victor's legal team filed new motions. Challenge to the inheritance validity, review of probate timing, emergency petition questioning psychological evaluation procedures. This time, he hired an international firm, lawyers outside Cole and Dominion's reach. He wanted distance. He wanted a battlefield she could not control. The filings were aggressive but carefully worded, never accusing directly, only implying irregularities. Enough to create doubt. Enough to force response. News crews waited outside Maya's office building. Microphones extended toward her each morning. "Mrs. Brooks, did you influence the court? Are you using power to silence your ex-husband? Will you release financial records?" She never stopped walking. No comment. The phrase became her shield. Repetition turned silence into strategy. Inside the company, partners monitored reputational impact. Some expected retaliation, countersuits, defamation claims, economic pressure. Instead, Maya issued one internal instruction. All official responses go through compliance. No personal engagement. Arthur Bennett studied her carefully. "You understand he is provoking you?" "Yes." And she looked at the city skyline through the glass. "He wants conflict. Conflict creates equality. I won't give him that." The media war intensified anyway. Victor appeared on podcasts, panel discussions, morning talk shows. Each time his message sharpened, not emotional but concerned. "I fear for my son's environment. Corporate boardrooms are not childhoods. Public opinion divided. Some viewed him as a father fighting wealth corruption. Others saw resentment toward a woman who surpassed him overnight. But doubt existed, and doubt was all he needed. His final move came through court filing number 3. A psychological custody review request citing sudden personality shift following extreme inheritance and assumption of authority. He was not trying to win legally yet. He was trying to exhaust her publicly. Victor requested a private discussion, not through lawyers. Directly, Arthur advised against it immediately. He wants leverage. Maya read the message again. No media, no attorneys, just conversation. For Noah. She considered for a long moment before answering. Arrange it. Neutral location. They met at a quiet waterfront restaurant early morning before opening hours. Chairs were still stacked on nearby tables. The lagoon was calm, gray beneath the overcast sky. Victor arrived first. He looked different. Not ruined, not broken, but worn. The confidence he once carried effortlessly now required effort. Maya walked in alone. No security, no assistance. She sat across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. The city, sound were distant here. Victor exhaled. I didn't expect you to come. You said it was about Noah. He nodded slowly. It is. He looked at the water, then back at her. I misjudged you. She said nothing. I thought, after your grandfather died, you were drifting. I believed I was stabilizing things. Then suddenly you controlled everything. The court, the firm, the narrative. I controlled none of those, she replied calmly. I simply stopped being defenseless. He studied her face, searching for the woman from months earlier. She was still there, but anchored now. I want us to negotiate, he said. Joint custody, structured schedule, public statement together to end this. Why? He hesitated. Because this war hurts him. And the interviews? She asked. His jaw tightened. I needed pressure. She held his gaze. You needed victory. Silence stretched. Victor leaned forward slightly. I'm apologizing, Maya. The words were genuine, but late. I should have spoken to you before court. I should not have let others define you. I see that now. Her expression did not change. You don't see me, she said quietly. You see consequences. The statement landed heavier than accusation. He looked down briefly. Maybe both. She stood. I will never prevent you from being his father, she said. But I will never again allow you to threaten his stability to protect your pride. I'm offering peace. You're offering retreat, she replied. Peace would have come before the cameras. He rose as well. So that's it. We continue destroying each other. No, she said calmly. You are fighting me. I am protecting him. Those are different directions. He searched her face once more, hoping for hesitation. There was none. If you continue legally, she added, I will respond legally. Nothing more. Nothing personal. She turned to leave, then paused. Authority isn't what changed me, Victor. Certainty did. She walked out. Victor remained standing beside the table, realizing negotiation had not failed. It had never truly begun. And yet, neither of them had finished the fight. Victor filed one last case. This time there was no media tour, no interviews, no suggestions whispered to journalists. The documents went directly to the court, dense, technical, deliberate. A comprehensive custody challenge supported by private investigators, financial analysts, and behavioral specialists. If public sympathy could not shift the outcome, he would attempt legal precision. The claims centered on intent. His lawyers argued Maya's decisions were not maternal but strategic, that her structured routines, limited social exposure for Noah, and tightly scheduled education plan reflected corporate management rather than parenting. They presented charts, time logs, and professional observations. Her environment, the lead counsel stated, resembles executive conditioning, not childhood development. They avoided attacking her wealth. Instead, they attacked her discipline. In response, Maya did not attend the preliminary hearing. Arthur Bennett handled the procedural stage alone, submitting minimal rebuttal, only records, school reports, pediatric evaluations, counselor assessments, and testimony from Noah's teachers. No theatrics, no counter-accusations, just documentation. The judge scheduled a full review. The courtroom was quieter than the first hearing months ago. No crowd gathered now. Curiosity had faded. Only professionals remained, people who understood that this session would end the conflict permanently. Victor arrived early. He looked composed, but fatigue sat beneath his eyes. Months of pursuit had narrowed his world to a single objective: prove necessity. Maya entered minutes before proceedings began, holding Noah's hand. She knelt beside him near the waiting officer, speaking softly. He nodded, unconcerned, accustomed now to rooms where adults debated his life. The judge began. This court has reviewed extensive submissions from both parties. Today's session will determine whether further custody review is justified or constitutes harassment of standing order. Victor's lawyer stood first. He spoke carefully, respectfully. My lord, we are not questioning affection. We are questioning environment. The child's schedule is excessively structured. His upbringing now revolves around institutional influence, security protocols, and adult expectations. We argue the mother's new position has unintentionally converted the home into an extension of corporate governance. He presented behavioral charts and expert summaries. Maya watched silently. Arthur rose when invited. My lord, he said, routine is not harm. Stability is not manipulation. The petitioner attempts to reinterpret competence as danger because competence defeats his claim. He paused. The court must determine whether concern exists or persistence alone. The judge requested testimony from the independent child counselor assigned over the past 2 months. The counselor adjusted her glasses. I conducted multiple sessions with Noah without parental presence. And your findings? The judge asked. He expresses comfort, security, and trust in both parents. However, conflict exposure causes him stress, particularly repeated legal discussions. Victor shifted slightly. Does the mother's environment negatively affect him? No, she said plainly. It provides predictability. Children process major change through structure. He has adapted well. And the father's repeated legal actions? They prolong uncertainty. The room grew still. The judge wrote notes for several minutes before speaking. Mr. Hale approached. Victor stepped forward. You clearly love your son, the judge said calmly. But courts exist to resolve disputes, not sustain them. This petition introduces no evidence of harm, only dissatisfaction with outcome. Victor remained silent. The judge continued. This court finds the current filing constitutes continuation of personal grievance rather than child welfare concern. He lifted the order. The request for custody review is denied. Prior custody ruling stands permanently unless material harm is proven in future. Further repetitive filings may be considered legal harassment. The gavel struck once. Final. Victor exhaled slowly, not shocked, not angry, but emptied of remaining argument. The pursuit that defined months of his life had reached a wall he could not move. Maya simply nodded, as if confirming a conclusion she had expected from the beginning. No celebration followed, only closure. Life did not change suddenly after the ruling. It stabilized. Mornings became ordinary again. Breakfast conversations about school assignments, misplaced socks, and cartoons before leaving the apartment. Maya still lived there despite possessing estates across continents. To Noah, home remained the same doorway, the same window, the same evening reading chair. She kept it that way intentionally. At Cole and Dominion, her leadership matured into quiet reputation. Partners stopped watching her for proof and began following her direction naturally. She rarely attended public events, rarely spoke to press, and never referenced the custody battles. Her authority came from consistency. Victor's world also settled. Without ongoing litigation, business relationships slowly returned. Not all, but enough. Conversations with Noah became calmer. Structured visitation replaced tension. Over time, their interactions resembled parenting instead of contest. They never discussed the court cases again. One evening months later, Noah asked her while doing homework, "Why did everyone argue about me?" She paused before answering. "Sometimes adults mistake control for care," she said gently. "But care is staying, even when you don't need to fight." He seemed satisfied and returned to writing. That night, after he slept, she opened the old envelope once more, the letter from her grandfather preserved carefully in her desk. She read the final line again. Stand up, not loudly, permanently. She understood now what he had given her was not merely wealth, nor influence, nor protection. He gave her the ability to choose silence without vulnerability. Her reputation no longer depended on defense. Her son no longer depended on permission. Across the city skyline, lights reflected across the water just as they had the day she first read the letter. Yet everything was different, not because she defeated Victor, but because she no longer needed to oppose him. The underestimated woman had not transformed into someone powerful. She had revealed she always was. And this time, no one mistook her quiet for weakness again.